thank you, everyone. Excited to chat with you guys again. So there's all my contact info if anybody needs anything from me, right? Shane at PowerApps911.com or Twitter. You know, I'm a pretty easy guy to find on the internet. So what we want to talk about tonight was another little bit more complicated topic. We'll try our best not to, get lost in the weeds this time, though. But so one of the things that people are always asking about with Power Apps is, can I make it responsive, right? And so if you ask your local Microsoft rep, they say yes, and they stop talking, right? And they just move on. But in reality, can you make Power Apps responsive? Yes, you can. And we're going to look at some different things and ways tonight about that. But I just want to go into this saying that it's hard, right? And it's not like it's hard at any one spot. What it is basically we're going to end up writing conditions to control all of it. So everything that you see, I'm going to demo one of my responsive apps here in a second. Everything that you see in that process, like just think, oh, wow, he really wrote ifs to kind of control all of that. And it's not quite that bad, but that's kind of the place I like to think about as we go into it. So to that end, I think we should demo responsive first. So if I go over here, so here is the app, right? Responsive Gallery full demo. And then as you guys probably all know, right, you can always go here to details at the bottom, and click on this URL, and it drops you into an app, right? So all of a sudden you can kind of see it's stretching out the whole screen. But so in order to really test responsive, right, there's two ways to do it. One is the way that I did it the original time was I bought myself a new iPad, I had a new phone, and basically I would take the app, I'd build it, I'd hit publish, and then open it on my phone, I'd get angry, then open it on my iPad, get angry for different reasons. And, it was kind of a manual testing process. The other option that you have available to you is if you jump up here, actually I'm going to jump up there, I'm just going to have my browser open. If you hit F12 in your browser, whether it is Google or it is Microsoft, right? I'm using Edge, the Chromium-based Edge. It will drop you in the developer tools. Once you drop into the developer tools, over here on the right, there's this little symbol, device emulation. So it is off by default. If you turn this on, now you get this lovely bar up here at the top where you can either manually set the dimensions, you can rotate the screen, or you can choose from some of these kind of pre-built devices. And so in my case, I was designing for an iPad and an iPhone. They are both right there, so it was real easy for me to test.
So cool. I did the same thing as you. I built an app and just went on my phone and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I built this whole app that way. And then when I was demoing it to someone, when I was demoing it to one of my coworkers before I made the YouTube video, he's like, hey, dummy, you know that you can just hit F12. I was like, nope, I do now.
Of course I did. Well, that's good to know. Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah. And so before we start demoing the app, though, the other thing that you might want to do, so like when you're running it on your phone or on your iPad, you don't get the cute little purple bar up here at the top, right? This is only in the browser. So just remember, anytime in your browser, you can always just say ampersand hide navbar equals true, right? So just like that, ampersand hide navbar equals true in any of your browsers. You do that. And you tell it to be quiet, continue in the browser. Bingo, bango, it will reload without that top border. So that's another key to testing this, right? Is to, get yourself hide the nav bar. All right, so now that we've got this thing looking sporting on an iPad, nice vertical iPad at that, let's jump over and look at the data by department. So over here, we've got a gallery, lots of pictures of Chewy, of course. And you can see it's, it's not the most attractive thing, but I was just trying to go for, making sure we could explain mechanics. But, it looks good. And if you want, you can rotate the device. And now it looks even better, right? So just take your iPad, turn it on the side, boom, everything is there. It's got plenty of room. Life is grand, right? Now, what if we take this same thing and say, hey, I want to see it on a iPhone. So we got iPhone 12. So it went back to horizontal or vertical, whatever this way is. And look, the app looks different. We have the same information, but we've kind of redesigned it. We're using smaller fonts, both up in the header and down here. And instead of putting things and stretching them across, we have stacked everything. And instead of having that title bar like we had before, right? iPad Air. Remember we had this. We don't have this blue bar at the top. So what we're really doing in this scenario is we've built logic that says, hey, when it's this small, use a smaller font, change the layouts of all these, and just hide that big old header bar, right? So we wrote logic that is driving all these behaviors. Now, if we take the iPhone and turn it sideways, whoop, then you can see that on the iPhone sideways, because we have more real estate, we went back to the bigger font, but we're only seeing one row at a time, right? I would say that this is not a perfect experience, but it was kind of where I landed when I got tired of tinkering. But yeah, so that's the first screen, right? We're seeing it on two different devices. And I forgot in my introduction, please, by all means, if you have questions, comments, you can throw them in chat. You can raise your hands. You can just flat out interrupt me. This is meant, I don't have like this big proper formal presentation. This is meant to be an interactive, talk about things, type of experience, right? It's a user group. This is not a college class. So, all right, so that's our first screen. Now, if we go back over here, let's go back to our iPad. So then I added another screen. This one is just a search-driven experience. As you're going to see, I went with kind of the striped look. So I just, I formatted all that out. And of course, as you would expect, it searches just fine if I start searching for Nicola or Jeff. But that's just PowerApps search. If I rotate this one, right, so it's still on the iPad, same thing. It just got bigger. But, we're using more of the space with a bigger font, but we're not doing a lot of complicated stuff here. You switch to the iPhone, same type of thing. When it is sideways, not a perfect experience. You can only basically see one row at a time, but it is what it is. Or we go this way and we can see all the things on the phone, right? That's for you younger people with those young guys, right? You can see that on an iPhone. I probably couldn't see that on an iPhone, but.
Hey, how was your Tuesday?
Oh, my Tuesday was good.
Hey Shane, we got a question here in the chat. How often do you build these fully responsive apps? Is it just for clients where they request this functionality, or do you implement this as you go?
For Fernando, that is a fabulous question. So I would tell you that for the most part, I try to talk customers out of this. And the reason for it is that it's not twice as much work, right? It is exponentially more work depending on how many screens they have, how many devices they want to design for. Do they want to be able to rotate their devices, or can we do a fixed width? It gets really, it can really bloat a project's hours pretty quick. So as a rule of thumb, I try to talk customers out of it. I don't think it's a good use of their money, because in reality, if you really push them, they're going to tell me that, hey, 99% of the time we use it on a desktop, but like once every blue moon, my boss wants to use it on his phone. All right, well, do you really want to pay triple the price for that once every in a while for your boss? You probably don't. So, we've done it. Obviously this is straight up a knockoff of one I did for a customer. But, no, it is not something I recommend. I don't think it's for the faint of heart. I think in most cases it's better just to build a desktop app and a mobile app instead of trying to make one truly responsive app. But it is up to you. Cool. All right. Good question. All right. So yeah, so that's the screen. All right. Pretty easy screen. This was the one I built the fastest. It has the least amount of functionality. Last but not least, if we jump over here and say, hey, I want to edit my data. I don't know why it thinks I right clicked. I did not. So, let's switch back to the iPad. So on the iPad sideways, right? Once again, I think this is the ideal experience. You can see this looks very similar to the previous. We're shading what row you're currently on. But what's neat about this one, so you kind of see the layout, right? You see how everything's spaced, the pencils over here, etc. If we say we want to edit Ferguson Taylor, we'll hit the pencil. Look, we're taking advantage of that responsiveness that we've already learned how to build to make this go from a 4-column layout to a 2-column layout. And then we're pulling in from the right a interface to edit the data so we can modify Ferguson's data, right? And of course, if we close this back up, then it goes back to the way it was. So if we turn this one sideways, same thing. You can see that based on the width, I did 3-column or 3 columns. So I just have 2 here, right? So I kind of stacked it a little different. And same thing, you hit the edit pencil for Jennifer here. Then we go to a super skinny layout and it is over, right? So that's the iPad. And if we switch to the iPhone, so this looks a lot like that first screen we looked at, right? Tall, skinny, got the pencil over there. But if we edit one of these, what's neat about this is that because I didn't try to squish. I'm like, all right, on a phone, you've only got so much real estate. We're just going to make, if you hit edit, we're going to make a nice editing experience. We're going to use all the screen real estate to edit. So they had an easier editing experience. And then when they were done with their editing, it would just go back here. If they turn their iPhone sideways, I would not recommend they do. You're like, all right, that's okay. The pencil's over here now. And if we hit the pencil, now I kind of got to scroll to do this. And I didn't like, once again, I don't like any of the experiences on the iPhone turned sideways of what I built. If they wanted, we could go through and dig and do more. But, once again, the big challenge with this problem, right? So those of you, I know a lot of you are consultants or building these for other people. The thing to remember is that adding a little bit more responsive, it is not an incremental add of time. It is almost always an exponential amount of time, right? It's a multiplier every time they want to make another thing or they want to add another thing. It's not like, oh, you want to support turning it sideways now? That'll just be 4 more hours. No, it's like, all right, well, how many screens did you have? How much, right? Every little addition exponentially adds the time. And that's why I don't do it for many clients, because the numbers get preposterous way too fast.
I got a question.
Yeah,
Did
of course.
you I'm assuming there's no such thing as like a power app telling you the dimensions of the screen, just the width and the height. Is that like in pixels? So it doesn't know if I'm looking at a 720 thing on my phone or like on a huge tablet, right?
It
Like,
does
does it?
actually.
It
So
does? Okay.
yes, yep. We'll look at that in a minute here. And actually, you know what? That's a perfect segue. I think you asked that on purpose. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So one of the things that I struggled with, right? And so as I was doing this for a customer, I was also coaching one of my guys through building his first one. And so one of the light bulb moments for him, which might be a light bulb moment for Bastian here, is I also down here at the bottom, notice it says debug and it's off. So if I click this little toggle on my finger, boop, and now you can see that it's telling me, hey, the screen size is 2, the screen width is 1640, the screen height is 2030/60, and a message there. Like, and if I rotate it, now it's got different dimensions. And if we switch to the iPhone, once again, things are different. So we can go over here and then rotate. And so one of the things that I really found was the aha moment for one of my guys who I was helping write his first one of these was this idea of incorporating a debug screen that they kind of throw at the bottom. And so, while the app is still in testing or, QA type of stuff, we leave that on. So if somebody says, oh, my phone freaks out on this one screen if I turn it sideways, we can have them toggle this on and we can capture the dimensions of their device. So then we can make decisions. Because what you're going to see in a minute is that one of the ways you might do things like determine your font size here is drive that based off of the dimensions of the screen. Another very common trick is if you want to be able to tell if the thing is horizontal or vertical, right? That is not something a directory reports, but how do you tell that? You're just like, hey, is the width greater than the height? If the width is greater, then you know that the phone's turned wide, right? If the width is less than the height, then you know it's turned vertical. So little cues like that are just little things that like you have aha moments, and then your problems become easier to solve. So Solar says, hope Power Apps can have a canvas ruler soon. That is very important for UI design. I couldn't agree more. Right? Wouldn't it be nice if I could say, show me a ruler on here, or show me even, what do you call it? Where they do the grid, right? So you just turn the screen background into a grid so you can really line things up. I think that is a fabulous idea that, I'll be honest, I've never heard Microsoft talk about, so I do not know if it's in their plans.
Oh, just like simple grid lines.
Yeah, right?
Man.
Anything.
Can you stick a background in there with your own? Can you make lines equally spaced apart in paint? I don't know.
That's crazy? Not a terrible idea. And I'll be honest, right? So one of the things I've done before, because I did need to measure the pixels between two things, this is probably stupid, but I ended up just drawing a rectangle between the two things and then seeing how wide the rectangle was. I was like, look, this is my poor man's ruler. So no, those are all. I like it. I like the ideas. All right. So before we abandon this app and go play with some of this ourselves, does anybody have any other questions? Anything else you want to see me do on the app to see how the app behaves?
Are they ever going to make it responsive? Does a phone app, pardon my limited power, but if I have a mobile app, it's just like a table or gallery in there, and I flip it, I rotate it, the power app's not smart enough to go from fitting it nicely from like horizontal to vertical, right?
Right. Yep. You're going to have to roll up your sleeves and do some of that yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's, and Microsoft would say that, oh, when they released this functionality that we're currently using, they really made Power Apps responsive, right? That's why I told you in the beginning. If you ask them, they'd say, yeah, Power Apps responsive. I just kind of cough at them and go, oh, that's not true. Okay. Well, so then that's our app. So I think what I want to do next is let's go make one, right? Let's go do a little of this. So if we go here and say, I want to create a new app, blank canvas app, create. So notice here, right, there is no choice for tablet or responsive. So, I would say that as you sit here, you can start with either one. And so if one is kind of your preferred format over the other for like what your end goal is going to be, I would start with that. I've done both. I don't know if I like have a reason to tell you to choose one or the other. So we're going to start with tablet and see what happens. Another question, how about components? Do you design them responsive to? Yep. So if you want to use components in your apps, and so like this one, the headers here up here at the top. So this logo, this button, and this are all responsive. And so yeah, I had to build the logic into those and make them responsive as well. All right, so we've got a new app over here. So the first thing you need to do, well, the first thing you always have to do, right, is save your app. Don't play with this and then lose your work. So save, remember, autosave doesn't work until you've hit save the first time. It's my public service message for today. But yeah, so the first thing or second thing you're going to do is settings and then display. And so what you need to do is you need to turn off scale to fit. So this feature is a reason that when you run it in one browser versus another, it tries to use the browser space within reason. Scale to fit is what's kind of driving that, and that is on by default. So you need to turn this off in order to do what we're about to do. Also then down here, so locking orientation. So, do you want to let them rotate or not? Once again, rotating doubles your scenarios. And we talked about double your scenarios doesn't mean double the hours. It probably means exponentially more hours. So, if you can talk your customer into at least not making you do rotations, you would cut down the hours tremendously. But All right, so we've turned off scale to fit. So now at this point, it's like, all right, cool, I've done my thing. Well, so now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to build the app using containers. Okay. So they're not up here in the normal insert menu. You've got to use their new silly insert menu. So insert and then a layout here. And so then down here, you're going to have horizontal containers, vertical containers, and container, right? Naming, it's hard. Basically a horizontal container, what it's going to do, so let's just throw a horizontal container on the screen for a second. So as you add things to this container, right? So let's just insert a smiley face. Icons. Where my smiley faces at? They're too far down these days. Right, so if we insert a smiley face, it goes there. If I insert another icon, how about a camera? It just automatically goes beside it, right? And I can't drag this thing around. Yeah, you move this control using the tree view or with the arrow keys. So I can right click on it and say reorder and tell it to move to the left, but I cannot put these in specific places. The way that a horizontal container works is that everything that you put in here is just going to start going to the right. So if we insert a button, another button, another button, and so you can see they're all just stacking up to the right. Now, what you could do, so right now you notice they kind of all went boom, 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 and it's off out of my container. So there is the ability over here to control wrap. Where are you at, wrap? Wrap. Oh, I'm on the wrong thing. So I got to make sure I have the container selected. But here I can say, look, horizontal overview or overflow, we're either hiding it. We could add a scroll bar so it would automatically scroll in the container. Maybe that's kind of cool to you. But you can also go back here and say, I want to wrap. And so then as I stacked things up, you can see that, like, so if I add a image control now, like it just went to the bottom, right? Because it's now just putting them in, it's filling up all the space it can. And then when it runs out of space, it goes to the next row. So as you can imagine, remember when we were over here and we, no, not there, this one, right? And so when we were here, nope, when we were here, and then when we were like this, we were wide, and then the stuff started scooting over on itself. So that's the wrap. I changed the size of the horizontal container. And so as the horizontal container got skinnier, it had to impose a wrap. And so that's why it moved Shane underneath and then it moved this underneath, et cetera, right? So that's how I was moving it, was by controlling the wrap of the container. Let's delete that. Also with these containers, you can do things. So vertical overflow, same as horizontal overflow. I won't do that one. You can control the alignment. So right now they want to align to the top. I can have them align in the middle, the bottom, or weirdly enough, I can have them align so they take up all the space. So stretch to fill the space. The same thing with moving stuff left to right, right? So left align, centered, right, or stretch. And so then now they're trying to take up all the space, right? So you can have some of these controls. All right, I see some questions here. I'm gonna pause for a second and read those. Yeah, so yeah, the kind of it was so the post in the chat's more of commentary on, responsiveness is getting us away from low code, no code. And so yeah, if the manager wants a special app, make them a special app. Don't make this app super complicated. I like that.
Do you feel like you have enough options from Microsoft with the justifies and the align? Is there extra things you'd like to see added? Feels like there's quite a few options.
I mean, I think all the pieces are here. I just don't think that the average non-professional maker, right? So the business users we're trying to empower have any chance to do this themselves without a lot of work.
Yeah, totally.
I think that if the answer should be what you asked originally, right? Well, I should just be able to take my phone and turn it sideways and the Power App should just figure it out. I know that that's magic, but I kind of think that in a low code, no code platform, it's kind of the expectation. So.
Yeah, much like you would expect maybe a website to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I get why they can't do it. I get that it's hard, but doesn't mean I don't think it should be done.
So excuse me, can I ask a question about this container? So we know we also have the card that you can bundle like the bundle that you can bundle all these kind of the different elements inside of the card. So what's the very difference between like the card and the container? This looks like a kind of you create a board, then every element inside of the board you can load go to that boundary.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with containers is the controls, right? So if I just take this thing and start resizing it, I mean, it's automatically filling out the spaces, right? So all of this overflow stuff that we control, all the wrap stuff that we control, like I think that is what makes these different, because you're right. Before they gave us containers, technically we could make responsive apps. It was just even that much more code, right? Because you could group things and you could just write all of the widths and sizes and everything to be conditional based logic. So the nice thing about containers, you're going to see it here in a minute, like, is once you get comfortable with kind of how they flow information, filling in containers to do what you want. And what you're really going to see is we end up stacking containers inside of containers inside of containers to get the right behaviors. But once you get comfortable with that level of nesting, it does more of the work for you than I give it credit for. How about that?
I see. Do you also use this as a kind of like the grouping function? It also looks like a grouping in like the Power BI in this. It's very handy when you get a very professional on it. Then you very easy to do like the multiple changes at one time.
Yes. I have seen people use them in a grouping fashion. And one of the most common places for that, like, is, let's just make another new screen real quick, is like that scenario where, say you've got a form and you want to have up here at the top, you're like, hey, I want an add, a edit, a cancel, and a save button, right? Like, this is a very common demo. And so what do I typically do? Like, I sit here and I kind of stretch these things out and I kind of start fiddling, right, to get these four things to sit the way they want.
Yeah.
So one of the things that if you're comfortable with containers, what's really easy to do is you throw a container on the screen, and then we take these four. I think I can do this. Control X, go into here, Control V, and so I put them inside the container, and then I say, hey, container, I want to have them all in the center, and I want to have them all like so, and then I want to have them all actually fill out the space, and so now, right, those four things are perfectly spaced, right? Back to somebody making the comment earlier around, getting all your icons all lined up nicely, right? Now PowerApps is doing all the math to make sure all four of those are right. And if I move them, and if I, pick this thing up and move it over here, they're still together. If I'm like, I need this to stretch a smaller space, right? It's automatically doing it. So containers do have some really interesting extra usages for alignment of content and things like that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I see the usability is pretty wide. Just depends on how deeper you understand it. You can use different purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Right. It's how comfortable are you with them versus saying, because the other thing you might have already known is when I just had these four sitting here, like if I really wanted these four to stretch from here to way over here, right, I could actually kind of just pull this one. Let's say I want them to stretch from here to there. And so now I could just select all four of these, right click, and I could say align and distribute horizontally. And now they're perfectly spaced out across the bottom, right? So that's the type of stuff, so solving this problem of spacing those out, there's 7 ways to do it. Which one comes to you the fastest, use that one.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think
Thank you.
you're welcome. And and this one I think is just the neatest because it truly, right, I don't have to keep recalculating. I just move it around. It's spacing them. So it's very cool. All right. I don't even know what I did here, but that was my kind of first, showing you a container. All right, so if we wanted to, let's make this, let's delete this, let's start over. So if I really want to make this screen responsive, right? So let's say we're gonna make a simple screen. We want to have a header, a body, and then a footer, right? So that's a very typical screen. So what am I going to do? I'm going to come in here. I'm going to first start, and I'm going to be like, all right, screen, I need a vertical container, right? I just listed out how I was doing things vertically. So obviously I want the screen to be vertical. So I'm going to drop this vertical container here. Now the temptation is just to take it and be like, all right, now it's the whole screen, but that's not going to work because that is tied to, if you look at, right, what is its width right now? Its width is 1366. What happens if I put it on a phone? Well, this thing's width would still be that. So what I need to do now is say, hey, container 3, your width is parent dot width, right? Who's its parent? The screen. So whatever the screen's width is, that is his width. What's his height going to be? I don't know why it's a him. Maybe it's a she. Who knows? Her height is parent dot height.
Can you do that for all objects?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
As long as it has a parent.
Okay. There's your responsive.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it's the first step into being responsive. Absolutely. Okay, so now we've got so that's step one. That's making your, I like to think of that as making your screen responsive, right? That first container is just about making the screen responsive, even though it's technically a container in the screen, right? That's your first one. Now what do I want? I need a container that goes horizontally, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to insert another one, and now you want to insert a horizontal container inside this container, right? And so you can see it nesting, so you know it's good. Now, I want its width to be parent.width. That is correct. Width. So parent.width. Now for its height, let's see what it defaults it to. It defaults it to a weird 200 height. We could do that. Let's change it to 100 though. So now its height's 100. And so now it's okay. So now it's a little confusing, right? So one of the things I will often do, here's one of those tricks to help you understand, is if you go in here to your container, right? So I'm on container 4, the horizontal one, and I'm just going to change its color, right? Changing its color helps you visualize where it's at. And so look, right now, even though I said your height's 100, it's taking up the whole screen. Why? Okay, so now you have to stop and say, wait a minute, I'm inside of a container. So if we go look over here on the right, look, my container, because it's inside of a container, now has some extra elements. And so you can see that it is set to a flexible height, right? So that is on. So flexible height means take as much height as possible, right? Make the height dynamic. And so by saying its fill portions are 1 of 1, that means it gets the whole height of its parent, and it has a minimum height of 100. So the easiest way to see what's going to happen here, and let's change this to container / header, just so we can remember what these are later. So let's add another container in here, right? So the header container is going to be the first one, and he's currently taking up too much space. We got to solve that, but we need to add something else to understand it. So now we're going to go back over to insert, and we're going to insert another horizontal container. See, this is where the blue really helps you, right? Because look, now you see that container header is this blue guy, and the white space is container 5. Maybe we're going to change him to be yellow just so we don't screw this up later. But so now I made the Ukraine flag, I think. I did not mean to do that. That's kind of funny. But so anyway, now that we've done that, like I'm really weirded out that I just did that. But so we're going to name this one container.body. And now maybe we can start to understand. Look, so if we look back over here again, So flexible height is still on for, and we're on the blue one again. Fill portions though is 1 of 2. So this says, you know, hey, whoever I'm sharing space with, I want half the portions. What if we only want the blue to say be 10% of the what's here, right? And so we want the yellow to be 9%, or 90%. Well, let's go down here to this one, right? He's 1 of 2 also. We're going to change this one to say you're 9 now, though. Now notice you're going to see as soon as I click out, the 2 is going to automatically update. And so now this one has 9 of 2, and this one has 1 of 10. And now we've achieved the balance that we wanted. Keeping in mind that because I said the minimum height here is 100, no matter what the portion should be, it says, hey, don't ever make me anything smaller than 100. So that's giving us flexible size. Now, in reality, I wouldn't do this, okay? Because in reality, for my header section, I don't want it dynamically getting bigger and smaller. I just want to design it for one size. So what I'm really going to do is I'm going to turn off flexible height for that one, and then just say height is 100. And so now it'll always be 100. And then this guy will just get 9 of 9. We'll just change this back to 1 of 1. But the yellow section is just going to get the whole, everything that's left. Because now, last but not least, we want to click back on the main container. We want to go back over here to plus. We want to insert one more horizontal container down at the bottom. That's going to be our footer. So we're going to rename that footer for ourselves. And then, you know, once again, we're going to set its color. I'm going to mess up my flag. I'm going to make this one this weird. Yeah, that's ugly. That's ugly. They're all
Maybe
ugly.
find some tricolor for you. There's a nice website. Tell you put it like one color, tells you the 3 that.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. All right. We're just going to stick with that. But yeah, I'm with you. The colors are a little rough. And so then what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say, hey, I want your flexible height off as well. And then you're also going to have a height. I'm going to set you to 100. So now if you think about when we render the screen, this will get 100 pixels. This will get 100 pixels. And then the yellow here will get everything else. And if we wanted to preview that, right, we could say play. And then if we shrink the window, hopefully this works. See how as I make things smaller, the 2 blues keep holding their ground, but the yellow is just absorbing all the distance, right? So that's giving us the flexible middle, but with standard or with, you know, hard-coded tops and bottoms.
That's going to be 100 pixels no matter what, right?
The top,
Yeah.
yes, right, because
Yeah.
it is set to, it's just a height of 100, and then this one is set to a height of 100.
Can you set
Now,
it to be like 0.1 or like 10% of the height of the screen? Does that work out?
You could do that, but then now you're making yourself fight with more responsive pieces, right? Back to the whole, is that incremental work or is that exponential work? But yes, right. If I wanted it just to be 10% of the screen, right, then what are we doing? We're back to the whole idea of we'll just turn flexible height on here.
Yeah.
We'll turn on here, right? We'll say you are now 8 because then we're going to turn it on here. And then you are 1. And so, yeah, so he's 1, and he's 8.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing to remember about this, and this is getting a little bit down the rabbit hole, but the minimum heights can come into effect. Because if you think about it, my screen is currently only 766 pixels tall. And so 766, you know, 10% of that is only 76. So,
yeah.
So it's not actually, it's no longer locked to 100. It's literally locked to your, or no, it's at 10%, but a minimum of 100. So that kind of makes, once again, makes your math even more weird. So that's why I don't really love it. But it works. Yeah, because like, so let's say if we take this one right here, and if we said, hey, his minimum height is 1,000, which we know is too big. What happens here is he's shoved off the screen, right? Because now he's got 100, he's got 1,000, and even though the other guy is supposed to get 10%, it doesn't matter, right? Because the minimum height for this one was enforced before him getting his 10%. It renders top to bottom.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
See how quickly you can screw yourself up?
Yeah.
And this and just as a reminder, everybody, right? Like I know my yellow colors are really ugly and stuff, but when I am developing, I absolutely use these weird colors because they help me visualize is what I think is happening, right? One of the things I teach in all my training classes, is assume everyone's lying to you, right? Prove it, put it on the screen, and then go from there. And we could, maybe we go here now, like, hey, I don't believe you, Shane. So we insert a label and we just be like, hey, what is parent dot height? And it's 100, right? And we go here, and we're like, hey, what is your, so they'll label in this guy, and we'll be like, what's your parent dot height? Labels are just so great to prove things. You don't have to guess, are you getting it right? Especially when you're doing the first ones of these. So there you go. Yeah, and if we play, right, so now you see that guy bigger, these two still at their 100, but even if we get really tiny, right, 100, 100, 120, and if we go too small, now we start pushing. Apparently I set this guy to, I don't know, PowerApps is very confused at this weird size I just made it, but you get the idea. Okay, so back to this container, right, and so then now the idea is that you want to do some type of, functionality. The idea is you're going to go left to right, right? So maybe it's the classic, what do we want to do? We want to do we don't want to do a label. We probably want to insert a back icon here. And then what else do we want? We want a label. And then we're going to want, what is the logo? Media, image. So I kind of stack my things in here. We'll add a company logo real quick. Hi, Chewy. So now we've stretched this. Now we kind of want the same thing again, right? If you think about it, what do we want? I want the text to have the whole middle. So maybe it is, once again, hey, this guy, I want your width not to be flexible. Your width is 64, great. Your width is 100, great. And your width is flexible. And so now the text has taken up the whole thing. And then maybe now we center the text, we change it to 32-point font and we make it semi-bold. And then we're like, hi, mom. And now we've got our lovely hi, mom. And then we could even say, now you'll notice that if we look at the container itself, the container says, hey, all the things inside of me, right, I can control them. So for example, I could say I want them all to be built off the left, off the center. It's not going to change anything because of the way we built this, but I can change the vertical alignment from the top to the bottom, or more specifically to the middle, right? That's what we wanted. Cool. But keep in mind, we can also go in here. And so maybe we're very particular. We don't like this thing being there. We want it to be on the top. I don't know why you want that. So I can select this one and look, it defaulted to the middle because that's what the set by container did, but I can change it. Like, I want this one to be at the top. And so then now I move him to the top. And so these two are at the middle following the parent, but he is aligned container custom so that he is at the literal top edge of the screen. The other thing I would probably do here is I'd probably start saying, I really want some padding. I want to get it off the edges actually. So maybe we go here and we just add some padding real quick. And so now we've kind of moved it off the edge a little, no big deal. And then actually I'd really just, I'm good with it. But you can start to mess with that back to like we talked about earlier, like trying to get into a more pixel perfect world is totally possible. But there you go. So now we have built out a top bar that kind of does what we want to do, right? And if we stretch, it's there. We shrink. Oh, I didn't want to shrink that way. I want to shrink like this. If we go this way, it is all nice and happy, hunky-dory.
That looks nice.
Well, thank you.
Working as intended.
Yeah, right? My demo is not blown up in my face yet. Yeah. So that, I mean, we can kind of keep going a little bit more, but in reality, that's the bulk, right? Like if you're wrapping your brain around what we've done thus far, you're in a really good place, right? You've got that first round of tools to go bang your head and find out all the things you haven't figured out and find out that one little weird thing you're trying to do that makes it infinitely more complex and you get really angry. But overall, this idea of containers inside of containers and stacking your screen out and then just filling in the blanks once you do is a great place to kind of start with this functionality. Now, I guess I'm going to pause there for a second. Everybody good? Anybody lost? Anybody got any questions on? No? Okay. All right. So then now let's be brave and let's go look at Crazy App. So Crazy App over here, he's very challenging. But what you're going to see let's just start with the welcome screen, much easier. So here you're going to see that this is exactly what I just did, right? One container to stack things up and down. But this one, all of these pieces are just in here. And so you can see that like the image is just set to stretch. The button is, what are you? You're also, or sorry, this is the label. You're stretching. You are using auto height. So your fill portions of 1 to 7. You have a minimum of 50. Button 1, same type of thing. Flexible height, fill portions 1 of 7, minimum height of 50. Your width is 280. And so that's kind of how that is populating. And so those all repeat until we get down here to the bottom. And at the bottom, so then down here at the bottom, you can see I went to a horizontal container because I wanted multiple things again. And so then I just kind of stack things. There's the toggle, there's the label, there's the other label. And then the last piece of here, though, remember we had the debugging thing, right? We know we hit debug, we see the troubleshooting footer pop up, right? And so I hold down the Alt key and press this. So another really cool thing about responsive is that it is responsive to change. So while the footer here, so if we look, its visible property is just tied to the toggle. So when the footer is not visible, it didn't affect the math for how much space all this stuff got. When we made it visible, it got its space, right? Because it is, if we look, it is not flexible height. He just takes 100 pixels. The heck with all of you, right? Don't bother me. So he just automatically takes his 100 pixels. And so then the rest of this stuff, the middle section here, these guys were all what? They were all tied to flexible height. So they took what was left over, they divided it into sevenths, and they all got their space. If we turn the toggle off, he releases his 100 pixels. All 7 of these guys refactored out and figured out what space they got. So I thought that was another pleasant surprise for me. When I did it for this app, that was the first time I had done that. And I realized that you could have visible and non-visible. And as long as your app is built responsively, it can affect the math, whether it's on or off, to drive the spacing behaviors that you want. So, and you also notice here, I used a component, right? That's what this little thing is. And so if we go over here, you would see that I made my header a component and I made the footer a component. And so in the footer, right, I'm just like, hey, give me screen size. So app active screen size, screen width, app active screen width, screen height, boom, boom, boom. So those are giving me all the different data points that are very common. And then there's a second label down here at the bottom that takes extra text, a placeholder. Because my thought there was that if I'm truly troubleshooting, right, so I want this data. I always need this data. This is just my sanity check data. The second row, I might want different things. So for example, if we turn it on this screen, it just says welcome, right? It just literally tells me, so if we go look at its, did I? Oh, I clicked on it. Extra text. It's just the active screen name, right? That was the default value. So no value there. But if you go to my department, so over here, I wanted to know what was my main gallery width because I was really fighting with the gallery width versus the screen sizing. And so to help me alleviate those concerns, right, I put that down here. And so on this one, the extra text is a different formula. So by using a component but making it take one of those things as input, I just gave myself a little more flexibility to do my troubleshooting and have every screen a little custom. So those are just like old dog tricks. You learn those type of things, But it's back to that mantra of assume everything is lying to you, put it on a label so you can prove that it's the size you think it is. So that is another very important key message. Another question. We'll hold that question here for another minute or two. That's a different topic altogether, but I will answer that one. All right. Other questions about responsive, right? There's so much more here. I've got a couple of different YouTube videos that walk you through the beginning portions of this app. I can share those links, or you can message me and I can get those for you. But they're out there. But really, the biggest thing, if I was you and I was trying to get into this to begin with, it's building this structure, right? So put that vertical container and then put yourself some horizontal containers. And then just remember, you can keep going, right? If we go look over here and go to this edit data screen, look at this. So there is the edit menu has its own container. The main body has its own container. Inside the main container, there was different things I had to put in here to eat white space. So I needed they were basically just fillers. And then if you look inside my gallery, there is containers inside my gallery, and then inside the container inside my gallery, there's another container. Like you can have containers on top of containers on top of containers, and sometimes that's the right answer. Sometimes you're overdoing it. But don't be afraid to stack containers inside of containers, because to build what you want, that's often what you're going to want to do.
Do you just find it gets to too many properties on too many things?
Yes, I mean you can make yourself go crazy.
Yeah.
And I think this one's a great example of it, right? Like I really, really, really got lost in here trying to, right? Because when you go big, it looks completely different. So there's a special container here just to eat up space. This is actually another gallery, and is this a gallery? I don't remember. Yeah, no, this is another container. So this one has a wrap with minimum sizes, and that's what makes it so that if you notice, like I didn't really demo this earlier, but when it's wide, it's good. Right now we go to there, it starts to resize. So that's wrap, but notice that the wrap doesn't use all the space because I needed dead space over here. So like I got real crazy. And then like once it gets too much smaller, it's not gonna let me go any smaller. Then this gallery is set that it says basically, hey, if the screen gets to be this wide, then just take me away. And this gallery up here and this gallery down here, because of the content inside the child or inside this other gallery, they have to kind of align. So they have logic that are dependent on each other. So there's probably 30 properties that are set to facilitate what looks so simple, having this thing just do that.
Jeez. I bet it's hard enough to pick up your project after a few weeks, or like to take someone else's with this. Tough to figure out if you don't know what you're looking for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the reasons, shameless plug here, but if you subscribe to the curated or the YouTube library over on training.poweraapps911.com, you can download this app. this fully working app. And so then you can truly reverse engineer pixel by pixel how I did all of the really crazy stuff.
That's good to know. I'll post that in the chat here.